Hello, everyone, and welcome to She Plays the Podcast. I'm super excited to be joined today by Kristine Sommer. She is a USA national team player for the US rugby team, has 13 caps. She's got one sevens cap. She plays Seattle rugby in the Northwest US and is the one co-founder of XXV Foundation, which we're going to get into today. But thanks so much, Kristine, for coming on the pod.
Thanks for having me. No, this is great. I'm excited to have a chat.
Yeah, well, I was telling you, I am super interested in rugby. I mean, I know how big it is around the world. I think it's the All Blacks in New Zealand, right, that are just like this legendary club of the dance and everything. But it's almost like hardly known here in the United States. I'd love to hear kind of how you got into playing the sport, and then we'll kind of go from there, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, man, watch out. As soon as you get involved in rugby, like you'll never leave. That's everybody's story. As soon as I touched a ball or I met a rugby friend or got invited to a rugby social, it was like, that was locked in for the rest of your life. Yeah, so I started playing in 2008. I went to school, UC Santa Barbara. Ideally, I was going there for some sort of soccer something. I was like walking on to the club team there. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to go to the Div 1 team. And then someday I'll be a national player with women's soccer and had the branded Chastain jersey. And that was kind of my thing. But then literally we were in the dorms and I only knew a couple people and they were like, hey, we're going to this rugby tryout thing. There were some flyers in the halls. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Cause just trying to meet new people. And also doing the tryouts for soccer there was crazy stressful. So I was just like, I need to meet some cool girls, I guess. Yeah, and so myself and two other friends that were in the dorms went to this tryout late at night, and it was like on this field that they, were renting, all these girls, and they just kind of like passed us the ball, got us in, introduced our names, and then we literally just learned how to play rugby. They were extremely nice, extremely welcoming. And honestly, like, it was an easy sell. I never knew how to play before. I played soccer, so I was like, okay, I can kick it. I can learn how to do things a little better, how to catch it, how to deliver it, work on hand shape, whatever. But that was it. I just kept coming back. And honestly, it sounds cliche, but I just never went back to soccer tryouts. Like, I made it through the second round. I just didn't go back. And I had a friend that just didn't go back. And then it was just the three of us that played all 4 years there. I found out they had a national team, I think my second year, and my first year, I didn't know they had a national team, but my first game was an alumni game. And so we played against two players that were ex-Eagles or ex-national players, but I didn't know that. They just looked absolutely terrifying. Like one of them, who was the captain of 2014, she was wearing like this wife beater. And I just remember her like stiff arming people to the ground, and it was just like so terrifying. But the cool part is like we all, you get up, and then afterwards we all hung out, drank together at the social, talked about our experiences, what they're doing with life, and it was just like super inviting. And I was like, man, this is a really cool network. And honestly, ever since then, I just wanted to get more involved. I try to get involved in more communities, play for different teams. It's honestly the one sport I wish I would have played earlier, but they just didn't have it around. So most people you meet now, especially my age, like mid to late 20s or 30 now, like they started playing in college. But after that, it was just like that. This is my life.
Yeah.
Forever. Yeah. Easy decision, to be honest.
That's awesome. Well, and how old was the program at your college before you started?
It was like maybe 15 years old.
Okay.
So we had some decent women that came through, helped start the women's team. We had some coaches that were involved in the startup of the program as well. So there was a lot of backing in it. Again, not a lot of financial backing, but social backing. So it was cool to see players that have excelled in the game through the national team and have had pretty excellent careers because of the rugby community. So it's been around for a bit. Obviously now it's a bit further. I mean, we have so many rugby teams, men's and women's, that are becoming university sports. They're funded, they're paid for. You can get scholarships to go play rugby in college, which is unreal. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely accelerated. I wish I could get a scholarship now.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be so cool to think about in just a short span of time, how much it has gone from an intramural or club sport to scholarships. That's amazing. And like a short window, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think maybe it accelerated when they let rugby back into the Olympics in 2016. So it was like, okay, now this is an Olympic sport, more funding, more kids want to play. There's like this aspiration of playing for your team in an Olympic platform. So maybe that was the Kickstarter to that, but there's so many more kids playing rugby, youth rugby, touch rugby. It's accelerating in junior high, high school, now university programs. So yeah, it's picked up a ton the last maybe 5 years, especially.
And I'm sorry to ask all the history questions, but how long has the U.S. team been around?
So they've been around since the late 80s. They won their first World Cup in 1991. And it was funny. We had one of the speakers, Marianne Sorensen, who played for that team in our virtual event, which we'll probably go over. And I learned so much about what they had to go through, how they had to get hand-me-down jerseys. They had to stitch on the USA logo. Like they weren't allowed to be called the Eagles, which is the national team kind of our like logo, or the USA Eagles. But they won the World Cup then, and then they came in second place the 2 World Cups after that.
Okay. Man, and just for reference, how long has a men's rugby World Cup been going on?
It's been on longer than that. I don't know the actual year.
But much further back.
It's been around for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's how sadly it typically goes, but yeah, I definitely want to chat about your virtual event. But yeah, it's just, it's one of those sports that honestly, like for me growing up in North Carolina, the only reference I knew was from friends when, Emily, I think, came over from England and they started playing. And so it is cool to hear how younger kids are now able to play. And just like curious, because I was talking to someone about lacrosse and how it's different men's and women's. Like women's, you can't body check, there's lots of restrictions. Is there any difference between the men's game and the women's game like that?
There's not. And I think that's one of the coolest thing. It's across the board, the rules are exactly the same. So the contact is the same, the ball shape is the same, the ball size is the same. Certain sports ball size is different. The field size is the same, the length of the game is the same. Awesome. So that part's pretty cool.
Yeah. Just truly equals. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because it is a physical sport. I mean, is there one more physical? I'm not sure there is.
I don't know. It gets compared to football a lot.
But they're wearing pads, right?
They're wearing pads. Yeah. I mean, I feel like because we're not wearing pads, we work on tackling form that's safer for our neck and our head. Just placement of our neck and head when we make a tackle and finish a tackle. They're definitely, I think, not Gaelic rugby, but there's a couple in the UK that are a bit extreme. Just a bit more contact heavy, less rules about safety. But in the US, I mean, I think it's the most contact heavy, in the safest way you could be contact heavy. So
I mean, it's amazing that, people pursue this full time, and if it was super dangerous, people wouldn't be doing that. So I think it's incredible to watch. And it is so much of the technique of how to do this safely and how to, for your own body, but then your opponent, not wanting to hurt anyone. It's so cool. I mean, I think that there's so much for people to learn, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners, they're maybe in the same boat as me of just wanting to know more about it. And so you mentioned that you play in Seattle. Is there a national league, or is it just like pick up spots in different regions of the country?
I mean, there's a national league. So there's a few different divisions for women and under the USA Rugby umbrella. The highest division in the USA is the Women's Premier League. So I think they have about 8 or 9 teams now. They're spread throughout the United States, East Coast and West Coast kind of region. But Seattle Rugby itself, we decided to play the Premiership in BC, Canada. So all of our games are actually across the border.
Cool.
For us, it was a bit more reasonable financially. With the WPL in the US, there's a lot of issues with funding. Players have to kind of pay forward for their flights, for their hotels, for travel, time away from work, depending on how far you're traveling. So for us, we just have to drive 2.5, 3 hours across the border, play a game, and come back. And it's the same amount of games. We just play against a mixture of Canadian international players as opposed to USA national players.
Cool.
Which I enjoy. Yeah.
And are they mainly stationed in Vancouver area or BC?
Yeah, they're Vancouver Island, and then Victoria is our main 2 locations. So there's always a couple games that take a little longer, where it's an hour-and-a-half ferry with drive time. It takes like 4 hours to get there, and then a bus picks us up on the other side of the ferry, and we go to the game.
Awesome.
So it's quick, like, okay, quick social. You know, if you have a beverage, finish your beverage. We got to get back on the bus.
Yeah, and I think that's a part of rugby that I love too, this communal aspect afterward where everyone's getting together and just kind of celebrating it. And, you know, like, oh, we had maybe that we all survived, I don't know, but like just I love it that is a part of the tradition. What is it about that? Like, just even coming into it as a newbie in college, you said that you went to one after tryout or the alumni game, I guess, and like why is that a part of the sport, you think?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like there's like a high, like, I don't know, community of respect, like this idea of respect during the game, after the game, no matter what happens. That definitely pulled me in. And I didn't understand what that meant until a game where someone, like, I tackle somebody or something happened, they're like, that was a good tackle. And they just, it's just like a pat on the back, run away to the next play or whatever's next in that game. Because I think in a lot of sports, when someone does something cool, especially on the opposition, you're like, mentally you're like, that was cool, but I hate them. I'm not going to say that. But it's just like this back and forth, tiny conversations of respect, because you play the game, you put your body on the line for your teammates, for yourself. But just after, like you're saying, it's just this value of community, everyone getting together on both sides, who just played combat for 80 minutes, and just getting together and talking about the game, talking about the cool stuff, maybe some disappointing things if someone got a card, socialing, talking about their families. There's like this big aspect of rugby where anybody in the rugby community, whether you know them or not, will give you a couch or bed to sleep on, will help you if you're struggling financially. I've gone to different states where I've just put out like, hey, anyone in the community, I need X, Y, and Z, looking for a gym. And then I just get connections to connections. And it's insanely valuable, the rugby network. I think that's what I'm trying to tell college students right now, mostly. Like, no, rugby is cool, but rugby can provide you so much more than you just playing 80 minutes. Like, wherever you want to go in the world, whatever kind of jobs you want to get, whoever you want to meet, the network is there, and it's so open to everybody to explore. And that's just the same, I guess, on the field as well, which is why I just became so connected with it. Just this idea that I respect you, respect me. We just battle it out for 2 halves, and we come to get together, talk about it, and have a good time. You don't see that. You don't see that anywhere, especially in the States.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always one example I give of like the value of respect in the game. In football, when the kicker kicks, no matter what team, the other opposing people, they boo. And they boo the kicker, they try to distract him, they flail their hands, whatever. But in large rugby games, even international games, someone on the opposition is kicking, the stadium is silent. Like, everyone allows the kicker to kick because it's cool to see them express that talent, which, such discipline. And it's just a respect for the kicker. So it's very different. Like, when I went to a couple games here in Seattle, it's like a conversation of no, don't boo them. Like, let them kick. As
That is
opposed to
interesting.
Yeah, push them to fail. So that part is like super cool when you experience like, 50, 60,000 people in a game 1-2 in the UK. It's like silence when they kick.
Wow.
Way cool.
I mean, to me, that's like Olympics, but at like a sport or league level. Like no one's booing in the Olympics, I wouldn't think. That would be so much a no-no because like they're just there to celebrate sport. And like you said, like
Right.
celebrate talent. I love that that
Right.
is a part of your sport. I had no idea about that.
Yeah. Once you experience it, especially in a large stadium, it's like, this is so cool. Like everyone just is on the same page at the same time to let that person kicker have silence for that purpose at that time. And it's just something you don't really like. The game is starting to progress more, and more people who are involved in rugby understand it. But I think that's one thing, people come from other sports until they see it, they don't understand the value of the respect for the game. But it's one of the biggest pieces why people play.
Yeah. Well, and like as a kicker, is that intimidating? Like, I mean, I don't know if that's you or a teammate, but is that like nerve wracking that there's silence, or is it like, okay, I actually can focus?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kicked a little bit in college. I tried to be a kicker for the national team. It's going okay. It's not like I'm first string or anything. But I feel like either there's yelling or it's silence. The kicker just has a mentality at that point to silence everything
True.
external. So they just become their own tiny bubble.
True.
Execute the kick and welcome this, and then like become part of the game again.
It is amazing to see that across the board of like just the zeroed in focus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That happens. It's so much discipline and just practice.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see.
Repetition with distractions, learning how to cope with it.
Yeah. And as far as USA Rugby goes, I mean, the Olympics, it's now an Olympic sport, but are there competitions throughout other years that are going on, World Cups or anything like that? Oh
yeah, we have World Cup. So 15s, we really just have a World Cup every 4 years. Our next one's 2021 next year in New Zealand. It's been offset to compensate with Olympic years. So our last one was 2017. But that's pretty much what we have. And then we have international competitions within the year to get us ready for 4 years leading up to Rugby World Cup. Sevens has a Rugby World Cup as well. It's 2 years off from the Olympics. Those are probably the main competitions we have, besides like smaller tiered cups where we play against 3 or 4 teams in a tournament style competition.
Cool.
I think that's pretty much it.
Sweet. And as for the sevens and the 15s, so that's like the number of people on the field. Field, pitch, what's it?
Yeah, you say field. People call it pitch too.
Okay. Is it same length of field? Like sevens are the same amount? Oh,
yeah.
Man.
But the sevens game is much shorter. So it's only 14 minutes long. It's crazy short.
14 minutes?
Yeah. So I think that's why it was back in the Olympics too. For a lot of people, it's easier to watch. It's shorter. Especially if you don't understand anything, you can watch something you don't necessarily understand for 14 minutes.
I think I now am remembering, because I got into rugby last Olympics. I think I do remember being like, is this just a quarter? Is this a half? The whole game.
Yeah, 7-minute halves. 7 people versus 7 people. I think they bring on, you can have 12, so you have up to 5 subs. But yeah, super fast pace. The game is still like 70 wide by 100 long, so it's a ton of running. It's exhausting. Yeah. I only play summer sevens like on the club level right now, and that's as much as I get. But yeah, super fun game.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about XXV Foundation. So what is it? Why did you start it? How's it going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, long story short, like women's sports don't get a lot of money. So here we are. To be fair, we were just kind of following the coattails of USA Soccer. We got some information December from our GM that funding was really bad. We're actually pretty good at dealing with bad funding and figuring out how to, pull pennies from nothing. So it's just kind of something that's probably not okay that we were used to that, but we were used to that. But we pretty much heard that it was even worse. And so we needed to raise so much money, so many dollars to make a few events happen or actually get them checked off financially. So that's kind of what Alicia and I are now, quote unquote senior players. We had a good generation retire from the last cycle. So for us, we're both lucky enough to have stable jobs and a stable income. And we were just like, we need to do something. Like, this is crazy. The same conversation every year. So we were like, let's just create something that people can push money to, that they support, that they trust. They support the players. They understand the value in the players. So that's kind of where I came up with XXV Foundation. And we didn't want it to be women's XV. All these foundations have to put in women, but none of the men's ones have to put in men. So we were like, this is just going to be 15s rugby to support the national team. So we started that in January. We operated under USA Rugby's kind of nonprofit umbrella. Raised like just around 100K in 3 months, which was bizarre. We were traveling. I was going to East Coast this year. So I'm located in Seattle. She's in Connecticut. So we're literally at the two opposites of the United States. But somehow we did that and raised 100K. The support from the community was unreal. Obviously, then USA Rugby went into bankruptcy. Then COVID happened. It was like the simultaneous of just two disasters. So yeah, I mean, we just kept chugging along, to be honest. We submitted our paperwork to be a nonprofit. And so now we're sort of 501c3, which is pretty cool. And so the idea of the entire mission, which I probably should have said in the beginning, is to provide funding to the women's national team players. So they don't have to pay anything out of pocket. They don't have to pay for flights, for expenditures, for hotels. And then they receive a consistent per diem when they're on tour. And that per diem is equal to or as much as the men's player gets. So it's very rare that we receive per diems. If anything, it was maybe 50 to 60 bucks a day. Last time we received them was in 2018. So the men's team gets like $100 a day all the time.
From USA Rugby or how?
From USA Rugby and like one external grant that they receive from another organization. So it's just like we found out so much information of where funds were coming in, how they're being dispersed, and where the disparity really is. And it's not like, soccer where it's millions of dollars. Like it's easy to breach the gap. So that's kind of what we're pushing on, like fill the gap. If I want to play for the national team, I shouldn't have to pay out of pocket.
Oh, 100%. You're representing. Yeah.
Right. So, or else we're going to lose players that can't financially afford it. Like super well-talented players that just can't afford to go to a camp, which isn't necessarily fair. So that's kind of where we're at now. And we're still pushing to raise money for the team. Obviously we have World Cup next year. Again, just looking to support players. So right now we have a Denver 8-week camp kind of bubble happening in Colorado. And we've been connecting players with other donors that want to support players, either through giving them flight miles or cash for per diem, putting them up with a remote job. So that's going super well. And then we have another small competition in November, just internally, assuming that everything goes okay with COVID guidelines, our bubble.
Right. Yeah, we'll put the link here, but how can someone contribute? Just go into your website?
Totally, yeah. xvfoundation.com is our main source. It connects you to everything about us, our information, our, quote unquote legacy, where we talk about the World Cups that the 91 team won and how we've done from there through 2017. And then it has, our donation portal. There is a small summary about our virtual event that happened, different ways to support players directly, Adopt an Eagle program, which is out there. So you pretty much adopt a player and say, hey, I want to give them, I have 10K flight miles. Can I give it to them? So that's going super well. People want to support people in their area, people that played for clubs that they played for, or went to a college they went to. So we're just kind of creating the connections. But yeah, xvfoundation.com is where it's at.
I love that. I think that's so cool. And like you said, the hope would be that that wouldn't have to be the case, that you would get
Right.
because you deserve it. But in the meantime, what a cool way even to connect with fans. I think that's awesome.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I just get, women's rugby a bit more exposure, more buying to the players, who we are, what's our sacrifice, what do we do day in day to prep ourselves to play at a national level while having full-time jobs, maybe second jobs. Some of the players have kids. So, accommodating that like family lifestyle too. I always say, like, my fiance here is like, I wish he could have the babies sometimes because I could continue to play.
Yeah.
Outside of like taking a break or figuring something else out. So there's a lot of balance that comes with it, which is something we deal with. So we're trying to just get that out there and show that we're doing our best to represent the national team and put a good performance on next year in New Zealand.
Oh man, New Zealand.
I know.
Fans down there. I mean, that prime minister seems to know what she's doing. Maybe because she's a woman.
She's a woman.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I can't wait to, yes, everyone go give to XXV Foundation. I was curious in like thinking ahead of like, I want to also briefly touch on the virtual event, but as we're thinking about a World Cup, what other countries are pretty big into women's rugby? And I hate even saying women's rugby, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. We had it's called a Super Series tournament. We had it in 2019, which is crazy. It was a year ago. That was the top 5 teams in the world, technically. So it's us, New Zealand, Canada, France, and England.
Okay.
England has a full-time program now where they have 30 players contracted. New Zealand's full-time program. France has a really good program going right now to kind of professionalize the game. Both the UK and France and New Zealand have amazing Premiership leagues that are playing now, that are supporting players with contracts and housing. So it is becoming more professionalized. Those are probably the top 3 I would say, with other countries coming up the ranks pretty quickly.
Okay.
Hopefully that's us.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's good to see the model is happening and successful elsewhere. I mean, I feel like there's so many people that still, I mean, being in the space too, and like having a startup in the sports industry here, it's like, come on guys, like this is, you're sitting on something that is being proven around the world, and it's, pulled up. But
like women's rugby is such an easy, it's an easy thing to dip into financially. Like if you just think of all the diversity, equity, inclusion that's happening right now, like supporting the women's game, women in sport is such a strong platform. And honestly, it's a very easy sell. I think just some people still think women are not marketable, not profitable, but like, it's not like the NBA was profitable at day one.
Right. Thank you.
They put a ton of money in it, and they're finally receiving some return.
Yes.
All those sports, it's just like, no, it's going to be negative until it projects up. And people are like, wow, women's sports are really cool. Why am I just hearing about this?
Yeah.
And people forget that. It's like, what do you mean?
I agree. It's just amazing. And I mean, like, I'm not here to crap on men's leagues or anything like that.
For sure.
But like, yeah, let's look through the lens of they've been around for centuries, and these are all 20 years and younger, and look at what was injected into theirs to help them grow. Still not getting that here, and so it is amazing. So, but yeah, no, that's really cool. And I'd love, just real quick, as I know time's winding down, but tell us a little bit about that virtual event. Is that something that people can pay to watch still or stream or something?
Yeah, I think we have it up. I need to put the link up, but the link is still live. It's saved forever through YouTube. So if you visit our website, you can find the link, xtvfoundation.com. But yeah, it was about an hour and a half long. Had a lot of good guest appearances. Had Julie Foudy from USA Soccer speak, which was surreal. Because Alicia and I got to be part of that recording and set up everything. So it was just weird to be like, oh, you're a normal human being. You're hanging with your dog. I'm hanging with my dog. It was her, Emma Sorensen, which I said played in the 91 World Cup, and then Scott Burrell that played with the Chicago Bulls, which just happened to be Alicia's uncle. So all these people that have won championships of some sort, talking about, you know, their experiences, how they plan, how they train, how they were nervous, how they got through, you know, mental issues, stress issues. So it was just eye-opening and just kind of a cool event to push XXV Foundation. We raised $65,000, which was also surreal. It was just a kind of a wild ride for a month and a half for us, because it's just Alicia and I doing all the behind the scenes work. But yeah, it was crazy. I say crazy profitable, but just like it's just a bit more surreal how much respect and support we had to get it off the ground, and how many people volunteered their time to do the production, their time to speak, their time to set up our donation platform. It's crazy. People are so amazingly nice.
That's awesome. Well, and I mean, kudos to y'all for, you know, on top of being an athlete, having to do all this, or, you know, not having, but choosing to, because you want to see it grow. I mean, I think it takes women investing in women a lot of times to get things rolling. And so, you know, I hope it's up and onwards from here for sure, but it sounds like you've got an amazing thing, and it's just really cool to get to learn more about rugby here. And hopefully 2021, we can all be watching World Cup happening and jealous that you get to leave the country and go to New Zealand and all that stuff. But thanks.
That's it, right? Everyone's like, I mean, go to New Zealand now.
What? Sorry?
Everyone's like, just go to New Zealand now.
Right?
Get out of here.
Oh my gosh. There's that video. It was some video coming up of like a guy who washed up on shore and starts like pretending to have a New Zealand accent, and the girl's like, "You're not from here, you have to leave." And he's like, "No, I swam from LA." It's like, you are all of us. If we could go right now,
we would go.
But
I know.
But no, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it and answering all my questions, because I'm you know, confessing I'm still a newbie, but I'm super into the sport and just really would love to see it grow and help it grow. And so where can people find you online? Anything you want to promo?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Instagram, Kristine_Sommer, Sommer with an O. Pretty much just that, and Twitter is where I live. I feel like Facebook's slowly dying. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. Like, I just encourage people, if they have questions, reach out. Like, even my email is out there. If you need help with funding or getting to a camp, or just have questions, or just about playing internationally, that's where I'm at.
Awesome.
Check me out.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for what you're doing, and thanks for coming on. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
No, thanks, Ashley. This is really cool, and what you're doing is just like next level, and I really hope it accelerates and becomes a normalized platform, because that would be really cool.
Thank you.
I would support it 100%.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. All right. Totally. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.